Hello there, right, we're in the orchard on the 8th of April, about 3 weeks into the coronavirus lockdown, which I won't say any more about, and we're going to try and put some more videos up, mainly from a sort of orchard diary point of view. As I've said before, I don't really have a lot new to say, and I don't propose to put up more videos about grafting that I've already put up. I've got nothing to add to what I've already said. Anyway, so we're down at the lane end, the mincing field lane end of the orchard. You can see this orchard on Google Maps, by the way, without a lot of difficulty. It's not far from the Farmer's Home pub in Durley. And this is a part of the orchard which has been changed very much since we first planted trees here in 1992, winter of 92-93. It's a complicated story, but where I'm looking down here, between these two rows, that's a row of what was Bramley apples there, and that is a row of Ribston Pippin, which is just beginning to come into blossom. I've said a lot about Ribston Pippin, famous apple, very important genetics. But down the middle, in between there was another row of trees. I've already written about this. We planted trees far too close together. You can see that these are almost touching in the row just up there. You can see that they're almost touching, and these I would suggest are at a good spacing. We planted them much too close together, but I don't want to go on about that particularly at this time. I want to look at a correction of a problem that occurred last year. Now, most of these trees down here were Bramleys. They're Bramley planted on Malling 26 rootstock, very powerful, very strong growing tree. Turned out we didn't need the Bramleys anymore, and we decided to graft this over to cider. So all of these trees down here were Bramleys, which is a very strong growing tree. The trunk is fully Bramley. Up to a certain point they were grafted over to different cider varieties, and today I want to look at a bit of corrective pruning, a little bit of corrective pruning on a couple of trees here of variety Somerset Redstreak. Now this has a fault, it tends to crop very, very heavily on long branches, and they tend to snap off. And that happened last year, so you can see that there, that branch snapped off under its own weight, and obviously that was quite wasteful. You can see there's a branch on the ground where the same thing happened, it broke off. Here is a worse example of the same thing. You can see there what happened, snapped off, that's dying. There's a few others, there's a couple up there, you can see that snapped off under the sheer weight of fruit. Now you can avoid that happening by thinning the fruit or by supporting the branches. It's not an absolute disaster. It's regrettable, but it's not an absolute disaster. As you can see, this has still hung on, and this actually would have cropped. It did crop. This is it's going to snap this. And you can see it's green, still alive. Now if I didn't do anything to this, it would set in that position, and it would still actually fruit this year. But you can see it's much too crowded, it's all messy, all jangling together. So just going to do some corrective pruning. So I'll just hand the camera over to Julia. Just going to do some protective pruning. Don't save money on gloves, don't save money on saws. People know that we only use Silky Fox saws. We don't take any money from them. They take money from us because we buy the very expensive saws, which are worth having because less effort. When the saw runs out, when the saw wears out, I can get a new blade. When my wrist wears out, not so much. Okay, so, and you need to protect yourself. So what we're going to do here, now I quite like that branch. That's a nice big branch growing out into free space. That's fine. So what I'm going to do is reach up here and take this one out, sawing at an appropriate angle. This blade is a little blunt, but I have got a new blade to replace it with. It's a little bit blunt now for one of these saws. It's only getting down to being just as sharp as an ordinary pruning saw. But you have to be a bit economical. There's another one. You can see it's a very crowded tree here, isn't it? I'm going to take this one clean out just there. another one up here. One reason for grafting these bramleys over to cider varieties in this section of the orchard, the oldest section of the orchard, was really management, ease of management. Money is no longer an issue. We don't sell, we do sell these cider apples sometimes when we have a buyer for them, but it doesn't matter very much. A lot of them, I'm afraid, get returned to nature. In a good year, hundreds of gallons of cider would come off of this section. Very good cider as well. I've got so much cider I don't need to make any more for years. Now this is slightly challenging. There's a big one that snapped off up there. That one snapped off there. This has snapped off here. I think I'm going to make a fairly radical cut. Often the more radical cut, a smaller number of quite radical cuts may be easier and more sensible than a larger number of
also,
more
let's
delicate cuts.
Show the viewers what was happening there in that main trunk.
Yeah.
Where the branch had pulled away, it was going to leave a very big scar which would be slow to heal and was already dying back into the main trunk. If we'd have left that bit, it would have caused problems later on.
I think very often with pruning this kind of established tree, a smaller number of fairly radical cuts is more sensible than a larger number of smaller cuts, and it's easier and quicker to do it as well. But it's okay for these trees to be somewhat untidy. Cider trees just don't need as much management. I'm going to come down and take a look at this. I nearly saw that one out, it's just in the way. You look at this, what's above here is a bit of a mess. Just need to put the weight of that's coming down on the saw. I just need to get a hand in there and
leave
push
it from the other side.
Back a bit, yeah. Oh, that is a lump. Putting the saw down. Again, you can see a bit of a mess. Branch snapped there, branch snapped there, the branch snapped there, branch snapped there. It's all just quite a big mess really. So what we've done with 4 or 5 fairly radical cuts, we've taken this tree back to something like a goblet shape, something like an open-centred form, and what will happen this year, this will fruit, it should fruit, and it'll send some strong shoots up. While I'm at it, and incidentally, a few folks have asked me what's the best time of year to prune. You can prune at any time of year, not with plums. With plums you should only prune in high spring when things are growing well, basically late April, early May. But you can prune an apple tree really at any time of year if you know what you're doing. If you look over here, there's a whole rattling forest of branches here. They're all sort of just too close together. There are really a few too many. Take this one out. So again, corrective pruning on an apple tree, which frankly didn't get as much care as it might have done last year. As I said to folks, the winter previous to this one, I was away out on the business in Australia and New Zealand, doing things that seemed important to me, and the orchard was neglected somewhat during that time. But it's okay if a tree has been reasonably well pruned over a period of time. It's okay to just not prune it for a year maybe. Just getting these out so that we can get the mower underneath That's about it. I could take a few more. Could take a few more branches out, but essentially I've opened the tree up quite significantly. That should grow away fine. If you just want to focus on what's been cut out, it's a fairly large amount of wood. Yep, there's another tree to get the same treatment. It's absolutely fine to prune trees at this time of year. Won't do them any real harm, and you'll have noticed that the buds are not breaking on this, whereas, for example, the tree behind it, which is
this is Reverend Wilkes' cooking apple.
Yeah, which is cooking apple. You can see this is almost at bud burst here. One of the things that most cider apples tend to blossom late, which incidentally is one reason why you can grow cider apples in places where it might be difficult because of frost. It might be more difficult to grow dessert apples or apples which blossom earlier. Not all cider apples blossom late, but many do. While we're here, let's just have a look at some of the oldest trees. So these are trees which we brought here when we first moved. So these were planted in 1992, but they were, I think, 4 or 5 years old at that time. These are certainly the oldest trees in the orchard. And here we see the same sort of issue again. This is a tree of the variety.
It's Harry Master's Jersey.
No, this is
the early one.
This is Tremlett's bitter.
Tremlett's bitter, yeah.
Which is biennial. Last year there was a very heavy crop. If you look on the ground, these didn't get picked up unhappily. I made all the cider I could make, and the two guys who were going to come and pick up some cider apples from me were inevitably unable to do that for various reasons. So here we can see there's quite a mess really. Big stuff broken down. The only sensible thing to do here is to take this clean up. Let's take this one out first, so I can get in easily.
And it's growing into the tree next to it as well.
Yeah, so I'll take a radical cut here. I'll take this cut just above you see what I'm doing, which I shouldn't be. Just going to make a cut underneath to stop this tearing away. You see what I'm doing, making a cut underneath, because otherwise doing this you could end up with this top could come away, it could tear away a big lump underneath.
The other way
there.
to avoid that is to take the big piece down in sections so you haven't got so much wood.
That's right, yeah.
But it takes longer, it's more cuts.
Okay, that's really, in my opinion, a way of managing these big old trees. You don't want to do too much to them, but every now and then you want to remove quite a substantial section. Incidentally, later on we'll cut this up, and the big bits an inch thick or more will be cut to the right length, my cubit, to go into our wood burner at home, and the smaller bits will they go towards barbecues and smoking. But actually, having said it, if we look up into this tree, it hasn't been pruned for a number of years, but we can see it is actually excessively thick up there.
I think we've got some that are actually touching the electric wires up there now, Steve.
Oops, you're right, we have.
It crept up there last year when we weren't looking.
Yeah, they get a bit upset about that. We have a pole saw, and so maybe this tree is getting a bit long now.
I think so, yeah.
So we'll come back maybe with the pole saw and take some more up, or take some more away. Anyway, so that's about it from the orchard. So I'm never going to be putting up as many videos as I used to put up in the glory days. Repetition is a bit of a bore, but I do get it from all the kind words, and thank you so much for all the kind wishes from around the world, especially to everybody who has ever messaged me to say, hey Stephen, because of the inspiration and instructions that you offered, I have planted some trees, I have established an orchard. That makes my heart sing. That really gives me a nice warm pink feeling inside, and so I'm really blessed about that. Okay.